Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Gorley, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in today for another episode of the Injury Prevention Academy, a podcast brought to you by DORN Companies, the country's leading wellness-based pain management and injury prevention company. DORN is committed to reducing costs of healthcare and workers' compensation, as well as reducing lost productivity, which has resulted in over $100 million in savings over the last 20 years for our clients. Joining us today is Kevin Lombardo, CEO of DORN Companies. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, Catherine, how you doing? And first of all, welcome aboard to DORN. We're glad to have you aboard.
Thank you very much. No, happy to be here. It's been great.
Good, good.
Well, I'm so glad you could join us today in discussing some of the trends that you're seeing in the culture of safety and wellness across the United States, and really how this past year has affected all of us.
Well, it's affected, everybody, obviously, in every walk of life, every part of life. And, obviously that's you can't overstate it. You can't mention it enough. But, from the standpoint of safety, there's definitely been a transformation that's gone on. We held a summit last July or June with 15 global leaders of EHS, and they all kind of to a person had said, hey, where the health side of it, the H side of EH&S was maybe 2%, 3% of their efforts, it became 100%. And then obviously over time, it started to subside. But there's been a transformation. That health side of it is now a permanent part of what people have to look at. And so when you think about it from a transformation standpoint, I think what's happened is people have transformed from this immediacy of the health of their employees, the health safety side of things, to now it's transforming again to, okay, what is that new normal? We're seeing more people working from home or remotely. We have different spacing requirements at the facility. How does that impact the safety side of it? So there's been a transformation, and it's been, honestly, it's been out of a very bad and very negative situation. It's been a good transformation, excuse me, to where people are now taking more of that holistic view of things, that total worker health, NIOSH's total worker health, which is our core philosophy of looking more holistically from the area of safety, and be glad to go into details on that. But I think it's been a good transformation to where we are today.
Absolutely. And where do you see those areas of safety growing, within this modern business world, especially as we go into this hopefully post-COVID era?
Yeah, hopefully post-COVID.
Yes.
Let's hope we're through the thick of it.
Absolutely.
Where's it going? I think technology, which technology isn't new. Obviously, technology isn't new, but technology and safety isn't new. It has been growing over the last 5 years. But I think what happened over the last year has helped to spur acceleration of that growth. Utilizing, when you have more remote workers and they're not on site and you can't have that direct interaction with them, you have to figure out ways to have additional interactions. And how do you do that in a way that is not intrusive, but also is very supportive? And then taking into account that people are getting Zoom fatigued from being on Zoom meetings all the time. So how do you make that happen? So I think that's a big piece of it. The fact that home workers went from 20-some% to well over 60% during the COVID period or more. And I think it's going to probably settle back somewhere around the 35-40% space. And yes, there's some companies, Google and Twitter, have said, hey, perpetually forever, people can work from home. That might happen. I think other organizations who have kind of indicated that. I've been in a number of webinars and sessions and talked to leaders. I think what's going to happen is probably in another year, maybe 2 years, there'll be this desired and pent up need to have more direct interaction so people will get back. So to answer your question though, technology, the accelerant of technology, be it for the home worker, be it for the worker in the plant that maybe you don't want third parties on site. There's been an acceleration of that type of safety technology. Now, what we got to keep in mind though, most of that technology is geared towards enabling the ergonomic side of things. It helps you identify the risk from afar. It doesn't always drive the interventions. And so that's where I think, where we try to play is how do we now not only identify the risk, but how do we then have these interventions for home workers, for the remote utility worker who works by themselves out in the middle of nowhere, all those type of things. So how do you take that technology, what that information is giving you, and then develop the interventions that in a lot of cases still have to be done in person, but then you don't want to forget your home workers and your remote workers, because the ergonomic side of things, I think, is really where people are starting to focus their energies again. A lot of conversations we've had over the last 3-4 months, ergonomics is the number one topic that people talked about. And when I talk about ergonomics, let's be clear. I'm not talking about retooling my equipment, spending millions of dollars. What I'm talking about is the ergonomic risk of either the equipment might be old and we have to work with what we have, poor body mechanics by people and how the workers work with that equipment, from your home worker, how they sit, how they carry themselves, how they position their 3 screens, their chairs, the ergonomic risk of just poor behaviors that I think people are now seeing as the next kind of, I'll say, large wave. So that technology shift I talked about enables us to identify that risk. You still need those interventions to correct that risk.
Absolutely, absolutely. And obviously, we've seen that shift in just the last couple of years. I think the last year really focused it, but seeing that
Yeah.
shift in the technology side going into this decade, I think is going to be huge. So how do you believe that that is going to continue to evolve in
Oh, it's
technology
it's it's
in
about
workplace?
it's evolving every day. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh
It's
no, no.
evolving every day.
Yeah, no, just in the world of workplace safety and ergonomics, where can you
Mhm.
see that evolving, kind of leading us?
Sure. So I can just give you a couple examples to get more concrete. Exoskeletons, enabled suits that help reduce the stress when people have to reach, when they have to lift, if they have to work overhead. Uh, so technology has been around a while, but it's
Yeah.
really starting to take traction. That because it reduces the stress, if I have to have a job that I have to reach most of the day, it reduces the stress on the arm and it helps me in weird body positioning. So exoskeleton type technology, I think, will grow more popular, be more integrated into organizations. Other tools, we've introduced this year something we call Healthy Working Pro, which is a tablet-driven assessment tool. It's got 21 ergonomic assessment tools built into it. An ergonomist will pick the tool, but it then guides the user through an ergonomic assessment. So it allows for non-ergonomists to now conduct ergonomic assessments. And then you start looking at other things like, our Ergo Aware program, which is training people to have what we call ergonomic eyes, giving them the ability to see risk, to identify risk, to report risk. So
Mhm.
as organizations focus more on the ergonomic side of things, bringing additional tools together, and this is from the technology space and training space. It's not all just strictly technology, although you could do it virtually, you could do these trainings, but really getting the organization to start thinking more around the ergonomic side, all the way down to the frontline worker. So that's where I really see it going. We get a lot of inquiries in that area, in those spaces, and it's just something that ergonomics has always been important, but it's now
Yes.
starting to rise to the top as one of the probably the number 1 or 2 priority for every organization we talk to.
Right. And seeing that focus on ergonomics from, like you said, all the way from the CEO of a company to the supervisors, to all of the daily workers, having that focus and having that importance on ergonomics, I think is going to be huge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, it's the number one or two priority for most of the organizations that we've talked to over the last 6 months.
Yeah. Now, you talked a little bit about remote workers, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously that field is growing exponentially in today's market. And obviously, as you can see, I'm working remote as well.
Me too. Haven't been in an
Exactly.
office since last March.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's really changed the work day. It's changed that focus
Mm-hmm.
on ergonomics, making sure that you can take the teachings of ergonomics and proper body mechanics and transfer it outside of a traditional office environment.
Yeah,
So how does DORN approach that movement, and how do we provide that same level of pain
sure.
management?
Well, how we approach it is, we had some programs that were here prior to COVID, and then during COVID, we actually introduced some additional programs. So it really depends on the needs of the organization. I can list a bunch of services, and I'll, probably mention a few, but in reality, what's the needs? I mean, I talked to an organization, a large cable outfit that moved all their call centers home. Now, they have spent a lot of money giving people the equipment, and
Mhm.
that's great. So a lot of organizations are giving people the equipment they need at home to establish their work at home space. What they probably haven't done yet, and this is the conversation we had just this week with that person,
Mhm.
is identify when the risk happens, what do we do about it? And I think that's where organizations like us come into play. We're not
Yes.
an equipment seller. We don't evaluate the equipment. We can evaluate the equipment, but we're not selling equipment. What we're looking at is when there is a high risk profile, when Sally has a risk profile of 8, what can we do about it? Well, there's a number of things you can do about it. Now, there's software that has built-in educational vignettes and correction tools. If there's adoption to that software, that is fabulous. Then Sally can self-correct. 2, you have virtual ergonomic assessments. And they've been around for a while, but I think they're just growing in popularity so much so that we have people that have actually been certified to do virtual ergonomic assessments because it's different. It's different being next to Sally, looking over her shoulder and giving her tips versus doing something like we're doing. We're looking at their workstation via Zoom. You have to be able to engage differently. You have to be able to see the workstation, but you have to be able to engage in a way that captures Sally's attention. So virtual ergonomic assessments are you talked about pain management.
Yes.
Something we did introduce last year because a client said to us, we need some help. I got all these people working from home. I got these people on site that you can't see anymore because at the time we weren't allowed on site. Fortunately, we're back on site now. And they said, we need your help. And so we figured out, well, let's put together some virtual self-care programs. And what we did is we are teaching people not how to just rub out a little bit of a nagging little issue. We're teaching them how to go deep, how to really get to the core and the root cause of it. And I'm going to be honest with you, when we when we work on site, we get excuse me 70-80% pain level reductions. I thought, hey, we're teaching people this. Is it going to be adopted? Maybe we're going to get 50%, maybe 40% pain, or even 77%. We've
Which is
done over
amazing.
500 hours of this type of work, of over 1,000 sessions. We're getting 77% pain level reductions. We're seeing 92% of the people say my morale is significantly increased. 77% of the people have said I have less stress. And when we put people who were used to going to an office and we said, by the way, you are now working from home. Some companies could afford to give them the ergonomic tools. Other companies could not afford to give them the equipment and stuff. The stress that it built. Then you put the stressors on of now my children aren't in school. So I have a job. I have to take care of the kids and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do for school. The fact is my spouse going to be get sick at work? because of COVID.
Hmm.
All the variables that we deal with in life kind of all came together and really put some stress on people. So we honestly, it came out of a client saying, help, help, we need help. And so we figured it
Yes.
out. And so between that, the ergonomic assessments that can be done through mobility apps, through some other things, the desktop software, there's many ways to get there, but it's not about, hey, this is the one way to do it. It's about what have you been able to do for the folks? What are the risks? What is the, identify those risks, quantify those risks, and then pick the right intervention that meets that risk where it is and eliminates it. So that's what we do.
Absolutely. And through listening to our clients and seeing those trends of remote working and
Mhm.
that lack of that sometimes lack of ergonomic support, that's where Dorn recently introduced SelfCare Plus.
Yes. Yeah, SelfCare Plus. It's really just a suite of services that incorporates everything that I talked about. I don't know if you have a slide that you could share with folks, but I don't want to focus too much on it. I want to make sure this is educational. But SelfCare Plus is nothing more than bringing together a number of virtual solutions in a suite of services that really helps organizations identify how to and where they can get help. So it incorporates our desktop software solution. It incorporates our mobility and conditioning app that gives people access to either exercises or videos on conditioning programs. We can do live conditioning programs. The virtual ergonomics that we talked about, and then the virtual self-care where we're teaching people kind of self-massage and how to get to the root cause. So really, SelfCare Plus is nothing more than bringing those together. And some organizations look at it and say, based on what we're able to do, we need all of these programs. Other organizations need a piece of it. So it's like I said, we didn't know where this was going when it all started back last March, but
Right.
it's been tremendously successful. That one client who raised their hand and said, "Hey, help, help, help! I need support." We're now back on site. Everything seems to be working well, but they said keep the virtual program because there's a need. Some people still working from home, other people just hesitant to be in the same space as maybe one of our specialists. But in reality, there's a place for all of these programs, whether you're on site with direct interventions, whether you're using technology to identify the risk, or using other technologies now to actually address the risk. And that's, I think, the biggest evolution. When you asked me earlier about evolution,
Yes.
it's gone from an on-site kind of mentality, which we still are on site with most of our clients, to technology enabled to identify the risk. A lot of these ergonomic tools are there to identify risk. We have a fatigue identification software. It's not an intervention. It's identification of cognitive impairment. So it's gone from on-site to technology enabled to identify risk to now technology enabled to address the risk, be it the exoskeletons, be it SelfCare Plus and those components. We're now able to address the risk. And that's the biggest evolution from that perspective, that allows organizations to say, okay, how are we going to attack our injury prevention programs? Hey, we have drivers who are never on the site. We have utility workers that climb poles. They're never in the site, the central location, other than maybe once a year for training. How do we do this? We now have those capabilities. The technology is wonderful because now it gives people those capabilities.
Absolutely. And using technology to truly create that culture within an organization of wellness
Mm-hmm.
and safety, and really making sure that those organizations are taking care of their employees. I mean, that's the
Oh
end
yeah,
goal. And it's creating those long-term solutions for their
yeah,
employees so they can take learning proper ergonomics and body mechanics in the workplace and even applying them at home.
sure, absolutely, absolutely. I think teaching people, one of our lines is, and it's just kind of our tagline: empowerment through education and engagement. it's something that we believe in. It's not just a tagline. It's not a marketing tagline. It's something that we believe in. When you think about organizations, they empower employees all the time. So they give them computers, they give them workstations, they give them hand tools, they give them a forklift, they give them a truck. We're a tool. We're just empowering people, and we do it. And the reason we say education and engagement, it wasn't about, hey, it's this service. It almost, the service.
Yes.
Back in the day, when you used to change technology systems in a previous life, people would always say, hey, do you want an AS400 box? Do you want cloud-based? Do you want Linux technology? What technology do you want? And I would tell people all the time, that's the last decision. It doesn't matter what the technology is. What matters is, what do I need? And so when we say empowerment through engagement and education, we don't say empowerment through service X. It's about engaging those people. It's about educating them on the right ways of doing things, engaging them, meeting them where they are, and bringing them along. You mentioned culture. I'd like to talk about culture a little bit. Here's how I define culture, and I've defined it this way for 30 years. Culture to me is the sum total of the conversations. It's not the posters. It's not the some speeches. It's not what's on somebody's website. That's important. Don't get me wrong. That's critically important. But it's really the sum total conversations. Let me give you an example. If you have a manufacturing facility and the people are talking about every day in the summer, it's 90 some degrees, it's just hot in here, and it's unbearable, and we're just sweating all day, and that's your culture. It doesn't matter what you say. Now, if you say, hey, we have a culture of wellness for our employees and health and safety, I think you failed on the culture space. If you haven't done things like, if you can't air condition the building because of the cost, then having fans, having swamp coolers, bringing them, drinks that have electrolytes in it, doing things that can mitigate. They may not eliminate, but they can mitigate. Then you have a culture of wellness. Having people report early, whether it's pain or discomfort, whether it's other issues that they have. If you don't have a culture of that, if your supervisor is more interested in getting the widgets out than Johnny being able to early report discomfort or pain, you don't have a culture of holistic safety. So the other thing we believe in is NIOSH's total worker health, which says holistically look at the employees. When you do that holistically and you start implementing programs around that, then you have a safety culture. I want to give you another example.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of the person by the name of Madeline Parker?
I have not, actually.
Okay, most people haven't. She's a programmer with a company in Silicon Valley, and I don't know her either. This is something I've read. And she sent an email out on a Wednesday to the entire organization, said, I will be off Thursday and Friday. I am taking mental health days. I just need to kind of reset. The email went to the CEO as well. The CEO wrote back and copied the entire organization and said, thank you, Madeline. We look forward to you coming back Monday, fully prepared to engage and do your job to the best of your abilities. We applaud you for taking this time. How many organizations, and I do this when I speak at conferences, and I look for raising of hands, how many organizations would actually not cringe if they saw an email that says somebody was taking a mental health day versus, oh, I'm just taking sick days tomorrow? That's a culture of total worker health. That's a culture of safety and wellness. And so that's what I mean by culture. And that's the sum total of conversations. She put something out there at high risk, no doubt, to herself.
Yes.
But obviously she must have understood the culture of the organization, or maybe she wouldn't have chosen that route. But somebody will do that one day when they don't know what that reaction is going to be. And you're putting yourself out there. It's a risk. And when the CEO comes back and says, thank you, we will see you Monday, and rest up and get yourself ready, so, because we need you, Madeline. We need you as part of the team. So that's what I mean by culture of wellness, culture of safety. It's not all about the programs, the posters, the programs. those are the empowerment tools. You got to start with that culture side first.
That's great. That's great. And going into this decade, you're really seeing a shift in that overall wellness that includes mental health.
Oh,
This
absolutely.
past year has been it's really cast a light on
Hmm.
what makes someone productive, but also what gives them a sense of well-being and what keeps them healthy, whether it's physically or mentally. So it's
Yeah,
exciting to see this shift.
it is exciting. I mean, there's a huge growth in telemed and telehealth, not just from doctors being able to say, hey, I've got this issue. What is it? They try to diagnose it and they send you off your way. I'm talking more on the mental health side, as far as being able to talk to somebody, identify the stressors. Like I said, we're seeing 77% of the people tell us they have a reduction in stress with some of the tools that we're giving them. Well, if you
Hmm.
layer on top of it some of the mental health tools that can be given to folks with some tools of self-care that we provide, you're really empowering people. And at the end of the day, our goal is to empower people to be their optimal in life, not just on the job. Yes, we're hired by companies to make them optimal on the job, but they need to have the optimal level of living. And if we can help in some small way as being part of that whole ecosystem, absolutely.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for
Oh, my
joining
pleasure.
our injury prevention podcast. I know this has been incredibly informative to our clients, but also to others in our audience as they work to build their own foundation of safety and well-being.
No, absolutely. And Catherine, again, welcome aboard to DORN. You're joining at a great, exciting time of high energy, high growth.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to thank our audience as well for joining Dorn's Injury Prevention Academy. And please tune in next time to learn more about the innovative steps and programs taking place in today's world of safety. Thank you so much.
Thank you.